The crystalline chamber fell silent as elder physician Senna raised her hand. Kelara stood on the examination platform, her heart pounding in her chest. Around her, 12 members of the assessment council sat in elevated seats, their faces showing no emotion. This was the ceremony every Veeth female experienced at maturity. This was the moment that determined her worth. Senna's voice echoed through the chamber. Subject Kelara, Birth Hive Northern Crescent, has completed physical evaluation. Kelara forced herself to breathe slowly. She had prepared for this day her entire life. Every Veeth female did. Reproduction was sacred. Carrying eggs to term was the highest honor. She had studied the requirements, maintained her health, followed every protocol. The measurements are conclusive, Senna continued. Her tone remained flat, clinical. Your frame exceeds compatible parameters by 47%. Your skeletal structure deviates from standard architecture by 32%. Your internal organs are positioned outside acceptable ranges. The words hit Kelara like physical blows. She saw her mother in the observation gallery standing perfectly still. No expression crossed her face, but Kelara knew. She had always known this might happen. Her body had always been different. Larger. Shaped wrong. Other females her age were delicate, their proportions perfect. Kelara had always stood taller, broader, heavier. Therefore, Senna announced, you are deemed unsuitable for reproduction. The designation of hollow purpose is hereby assigned. You will be reassigned to facility maintenance where your condition will not cause distress to fertile mothers. Hollow purpose. The words that meant her life had no meaning. The words that meant she had failed at the only thing that truly mattered. Kelara wanted to scream. She wanted to collapse. She wanted to demand they check again, measure again, find some mistake. But Veeth did not show emotion during official proceedings. She stood straight and still, accepting the judgment that destroyed her future. The ceremony ended. Council members filed out without looking at her. In the gallery, her mother turned and walked away. Kelara stood alone on the platform, staring at nothing. 3 days later, a transport ship carried her to Waystation Meridian. She brought one container of possessions. Everything else belonged to her birth hive, and hollow-purpose individuals had no claim to hive property. She sat in the cargo section, alone. The pilot never spoke to her. Waystation Meridian orbited a small moon at the edge of Veeth territory. Through the viewport, Kelara saw a blocky metal structure, nothing like the beautiful organic architecture of her homeworld. This was where broken Veeth were set. This was where she would spend the rest of her life, performing meaningless work far from anyone who mattered. The station administrator, Porith, met her at the docking bay. He was an older male, his face marked with the scars of some past injury. He looked at her identification chip and made a dismissive gesture. Another one, he muttered. You will work in the xenobiology research wing. An alien scientist needs assistance with equipment and translations. Do your task. Stay quiet. Do not embarrass our species further than your existence already does. He handed her a data pad with her assignment details and walked away. No welcome. No orientation beyond those harsh words. Kelara stood in the empty docking bay, holding her container, feeling more alone than she thought possible. Her quarters were small. A sleeping platform, a washing station, a storage compartment. The walls were bare metal, cold and gray. Nothing like her room back home with its growing crystals and family wall art. This was not a home. This was a cell for the unwanted. That night, Kelara lay on the sleeping platform and finally allowed herself to feel. Tears came hot and bitter. She pressed her face into the thin pillow and sobbed, her large body shaking with grief. Tomorrow she would be strong. Tomorrow she would accept her fate. But tonight, she mourned everything she had lost. Morning came too soon. Kelara washed her face, straightened her work clothing, and made her way through the station corridors following the map on her data pad. Other Veeth passed her in the hallways. None made eye contact. None spoke. They all knew what she was. Hollow purpose. Flawed. Broken. The xenobiology wing was in a quieter section of the station. The corridors here were cleaner, better maintained. She found the main laboratory and paused outside the door, gathering her courage. Then she entered. The lab was filled with equipment she had never seen before. Holographic displays showed three-dimensional models of cells and organs. Strange machines hummed quietly. And there, standing at a central console, was the human. He was shorter than she expected. Humans were supposed to be small, but somehow she had imagined them differently. His skin was pale brown, his hair dark and curly. He wore simple clothing in blue and white. When he heard the door, he turned and his face transformed. He smiled. His mouth opened wide, showing white teeth. Kelara's training told her this was a human expression of happiness, not aggression. But it was still startling. Veeth did not bare their teeth like that. "Oh, wonderful," he said in perfect Veeth language, though his accent made the words sound musical. "You must be my new assistant. I am Dr. Victor Hall. Please call me Victor." He walked toward her with quick, energetic steps, extending his hand in the human greeting. Kelara stared at his hand. 5 fingers so different from her 3. His skin looked soft, vulnerable. Slowly she reached out and touched her hand to his. His skin was warm, almost hot. It surprised her. "I am..." She hesitated. "I am designated for service here." Victor's smile faded slightly. His eyes, which were a strange light brown color, studied her face. "You have a name, surely?" "Kelara." "Kelara," he repeated, pronouncing it carefully, correctly. "That is a beautiful name. I will call you Kelara if that is acceptable." Something tight in her chest loosened slightly. Administrator Porth had not used her name. The transport pilot had not used her name. The council had called her only subject during the assessment. But this alien human spoke her name like it meant something. "Thank you," she whispered. Victor's smile returned, gentler this time. "Come, let me show you the laboratory. I have been studying Veeth reproductive biology for 3 years. Fascinating work. The precision your species requires for successful reproduction is remarkable." He walked back to his console, gesturing for her to follow. "Though I must admit, sometimes I wonder if the precision has become too restrictive. Biology is rarely as simple as we want it to be." Kelara followed him, uncertain how to respond. No Veeth would question the medical councils. The standards existed for good reasons. Didn't they? Victor began explaining his equipment, pointing to displays and machines, his hands moving expressively as he talked. He spoke quickly, enthusiastically, jumping from topic to topic. It was overwhelming. But it was also different from anything she had experienced. He did not treat her like she was broken. He treated her like she was capable. Like she mattered. When the work shift ended, Victor thanked her 3 times, using her name each time. Walking back to her cold quarters, Kelara found herself thinking about those moments. In this place of exile, surrounded by those who saw her as worthless, one human had treated her like a person. It was such a small thing. But somehow it felt enormous. 3 weeks passed at Waystation Meridian. Kelara fell into a rhythm of work that felt almost comfortable. Each morning she arrived at the xenobiology wing to find Victor already there, surrounded by glowing displays and strange equipment. He always greeted her with that wide smile and her name spoken clearly, warmly. Victor talked constantly while he worked. He told stories about his life on Earth, about his family, about the research he had done on dozens of different alien species. Kelara found herself listening more than she expected to. His voice filled the quiet laboratory with energy and life. One afternoon, Victor was showing her images of different species' family structures. There were creatures who raised their young in groups, species where fathers carried eggs, beings who created children through methods Kelara could barely understand. She found herself stopping at one particular display. It showed a Veeth bonding ceremony, where newly hatched younglings were presented to their birth mothers. "Everything all right?" Victor asked quietly. Kelara's throat tightened. She should not discuss personal matters with an alien. It was not proper. But somehow, standing in this laboratory far from her homeworld, the words came out anyway. "I was looking at the bonding ceremony. When younglings meet their mothers for the first time." She gestured at the image. "I will never experience this. My body was declared unsuitable. I cannot carry eggs. I cannot be a mother." She expected Victor to nod and change the subject. Instead, he set down the instrument he was holding and gave her his full attention. "I am sorry," he said. "That must cause you great pain." "It is simply biological reality," Kelara replied, trying to sound as clinical as the assessment council had been. "My body is wrong. I am hollow purpose." Victor frowned. "What does that mean exactly?" "Hollow purpose. It means I have no purpose. The continuation of our species is everything. If I cannot contribute to that continuation, then my life has no meaning." Victor was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled up a chair and sat down, gesturing for Kelara to do the same. She hesitated, then sat across from him. "On Earth," Victor began slowly, "we have a different understanding of family. Yes, many humans create children through biology. But many do not. Some humans cannot have biological children. Some choose not to. But they still become parents." "How?" Kelara asked. The concept made no sense. Adoption, Victor said. When a child has no parents or their parents cannot care for them, other adults choose to raise them. They become parents through love and commitment, not biology. He pulled up images on his data pad. See? This is my sister Beth. No wait, I should not use that name, you asked me not to. This is my sister Rachel. These are her 3 children. 2 are biological. 1 she adopted when he was 5 years old. She loves all 3 exactly the same. Kelara stared at the image. 3 young humans all smiling at the camera. But the adopted one is not truly her child. Why not? Victor challenged gently. She feeds him, teaches him, protects him, loves him. She is there when he is sick, when he is scared, when he needs guidance. What makes her less of a mother to him than biology would? The question unsettled Kelara. In Veeth culture such a thing was unthinkable. Younglings belonged to their birth mothers. That bond was sacred, unbreakable, defined by physical connection. I do not understand, she admitted. That is all right, Victor said kindly. It is a different way of thinking. But consider this. What makes someone a good mother? Is it the body that carries the egg? Or is it the care given after hatching? The patience, the teaching, the protection? Kelara had never thought about it that way. Veeth society focused so intensely on the physical act of reproduction that what came after was simply assumed. Of course mothers cared for their younglings. That was natural. Wasn't it? Over the following days, Victor continued sharing human perspectives on family. He showed her videos of human parents with adopted children, families built through choice rather than biology. He explained concepts like foster care, where temporary parents cared for children in need. He described mentorship, where adults guided young people who were not their biological offspring. Each new idea confused Kelara more. But they also fascinated her. She found herself thinking about these concepts during her off hours, alone in her quarters. One morning, 2 months into her assignment, Victor called her over to his primary research console with unusual excitement. Kelara, I need to show you something. I have been analyzing the historical genetic data your medical councils provided. I found something remarkable. He pulled up a complex display showing Veeth genetic patterns across thousands of years. I do not understand genetics at this level, Kelara admitted. Let me simplify it, Victor said, his words coming fast with excitement. Your medical councils say your body is wrong for reproduction. Too large, wrong proportions, organs positioned incorrectly. Yes. Yes, Kelara confirmed, old pain rising in her chest. But look at this. Victor highlighted certain genetic markers. Your body structure is not a flaw. It is a throwback. An ancient genetic pattern that your species had thousands of years ago. Ancient Veeth were, like me? Not all of them. But some, yes. And do you know what I think? I think ancient Veeth with your body type carried larger eggs. Stronger younglings. Your species evolved towards smaller, more delicate frames for some reason. Maybe environmental changes, maybe cultural selection. But your genetic pattern is not wrong. It is just rare. Kelara stared at the data, her mind struggling to process what Victor was saying. But the assessment council, they measured me. They determined I was unsuitable. They measured you against current standards, Victor said. But evolution does not move in only one direction. Sometimes old traits resurface because they still have value. Your body might actually be superior for reproduction, just different from what modern Veeth expect. Superior? The word felt impossible. I cannot prove it without more research, Victor admitted. But Kelara, nothing about your body suggests it is flawed. It suggests it is unique, rare, potentially valuable. Kelara felt something crack inside her. For months she had accepted that she was broken, defective, worthless. And now this human was suggesting the opposite? I do not know what to think, she whispered. Victor's expression softened. Then let me ask you something nobody else has asked. What if motherhood is more than physical birth? What if it is about care, protection, teaching, love? Your body might be different, but your capacity to nurture, to guide, to protect, that has nothing to do with whether you can carry eggs. The question hung in the air between them. Kelara had no answer. But for the first time since her assessment, she felt something other than despair. She felt possibility. The alarm sounded throughout Waystation Meridian on a cold morning 4 months after Kelara's arrival. She was organizing specimen samples in the laboratory when Victor looked up sharply from his console. Emergency transport incoming, he said, reading the station alert. Refugees from the border conflicts. Kelara had heard about the fighting. 2 alien species were disputing territory near Veeth space, and occasionally their battles spilled over borders. But the conflicts had always seemed distant, unreal. Now apparently they were close enough to create refugees. "The Veeth government is sending survivors here?" she asked. "Temporary shelter until they can be relocated," Victor confirmed, still reading. "Looks like, oh no. What is wrong?" Victor's face had gone pale. "There are younglings in the group. 5 of them. Their mothers were killed in an attack on a civilian transport." Kelara's breath caught. Younglings without mothers. It was the worst tragedy imaginable in Veeth culture. Who would care for them? Who would provide the bonding they needed? Within the hour, the refugee transport docked. Administrator Portha's voice came over the station communication system, tense and frustrated. "All personnel report to the main assembly hall immediately." Kelara and Victor made their way through crowded corridors. Other station workers muttered anxiously. When they reached the assembly hall, Kelara saw the refugees clustered together near the docking entrance. Adult Veeth, mostly males, a few elderly females. And there, pressed against the wall, 5 small younglings. They were newly hatched, perhaps only weeks old. Their body plating was still soft and pale. They huddled together, their large eyes wide with fear. One was making a high-pitched keening sound that made Kelara's chest ache. Porth stood at the front of the hall, looking more stressed than Kelara had ever seen him. "The situation is dire," he announced. "These younglings have no mothers. Protocol requires them to be sent to breeding-capable females for proper care. However, the war has created unprecedented numbers of orphans. Every facility on the homeworld is completely overwhelmed. There is a waiting list of over 300 younglings needing placement." Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. 300 orphaned younglings. It was unthinkable. "Therefore," Porth continued, "we must provide temporary care here until space becomes available. I am asking for volunteers." Silence fell over the hall. Kelara looked around. There were perhaps 20 Veeth on the station. Most were males or elderly individuals. A few were hollow purpose like herself. None were breeding-capable mothers. Who could possibly care for younglings? The smallest youngling began crying loudly, a desperate sound that cut through Kelara like a blade. Her body reacted before her mind could stop it. She stepped forward. "I will do it," she said. Every eye turned to her. Portha's face twisted with confusion and distaste. "You are hollow purpose," he said. "You cannot properly care for younglings." "I can provide shelter and food," Kelara replied, her voice stronger than she felt. "I can keep them safe until proper placement is found. That is better than leaving them afraid and alone." "It is highly irregular," Porth began. "We have no other options," Victor spoke up from beside her. "Kelara is offering help when no one else can. And I will assist her. Humans have extensive knowledge of child rearing. Between us, we can manage temporary care." Porth looked between them, clearly unhappy. But the younglings were still crying and no one else was volunteering. "Fine," he said sharply. "Temporary care only. When proper placement becomes available, they will be immediately transferred. Do not become attached." That night, Kelara's small quarters became home to 5 terrified younglings. They pressed into the corners, refusing to eat, flinching at every sound. Kelara sat on the floor, making herself small and non-threatening. "It is all right," she said softly. "You are safe here. I will not hurt you." But they did not believe her. Why would they? She was a stranger and their world had been destroyed. Victor arrived with supplies. Blankets, food suitable for younglings, simple toys. He sat beside Kelara and began speaking in a gentle voice, telling stories about Earth, about animals and adventures. His calm tone seemed to ease the younglings slightly. "In human culture," Victor whispered to Kelara, "we sing to frighten children. Would that be appropriate?" "I do not know songs," Kelara admitted. "Then hum. Just make soft sounds. Let them know they are not alone." Kelara began humming, a low melodic sound. Victor joined her, his human voice blending with hers in an odd harmony. Slowly, very slowly, the youngling stopped pressing quite so hard into the corners. The smallest one, the one who had cried in the assembly hall, crept closer. She was trembling, her soft plating rippling with fear. But she came to Kelara and climbed into her lap. Kelara froze, afraid to move and scare her away. The youngling curled against her chest, seeking warmth and comfort. Then another came. And another. Soon all 5 were pressed against Kelara's large body, using her frame as shelter. Something awakened inside Kelara. An instinct she had never felt before. Her arms wrapped around the younglings, holding them close. Her body curled protectively around them. She continued humming, rocking slightly, feeling their small hearts beating against her. "You are a natural," Victor said quietly, smiling. Over the following weeks, Kelara learned what motherhood meant beyond biology. Victor taught her human parenting techniques. How to comfort nightmares. How to make food appealing to reluctant eaters. How to play simple games that made the younglings laugh instead of cry. Her large frame, once declared useless and wrong, became perfect for her new role. The younglings could climb on her, hide behind her, sleep curled against her broad chest. She was big enough to shelter all 5 at once. They began to heal. The fear in their eyes faded. They started playing, exploring Kelara's quarters, asking questions in their small voices. They followed her everywhere, even to the laboratory where Victor set up a corner with toys and activities. One evening, about 6 weeks after their arrival, the smallest youngling looked up at Kelara with trusting eyes. "Ama Kelara," she said. "I am hungry." Kelara's hands froze in the middle of preparing their meal. "What did you call me?" "Ama Kelara," the youngling repeated. Then the others picked it up, chattering the name back and forth. Ama, mother, combined with her personal name. They were calling her Mother Kelara. Victor was watching from his console, his eyes suspiciously bright. "Congratulations," he said softly. Kelara looked down at the 5 small faces gazing up at her with love and trust. She had been declared hollow purpose. Told her life had no meaning. Sent away from everyone who mattered. But here, in this small quarters on a remote station, 5 younglings called her mother. Perhaps purpose was not something given by councils and assessments. Perhaps it was something you found when you opened your heart to those who needed you. Kelara gathered her younglings close and finally understood what Victor had been trying to tell her. Motherhood was not about the body that carried the egg. It was about the arms that held frightened children until they felt safe again. The message came on a quiet morning 3 months after the younglings arrived. Kelara was helping them practice their language lessons when Administrator Portha's voice crackled through her quarters communication panel. "Kelara, report to my office immediately. Bring the younglings." Her stomach dropped. She looked at Victor, who had stopped by to check on them before starting his research day. His face showed the same worry she felt. "It will be all right," he said, though his voice was uncertain. "Perhaps it is just a routine check." But Kelara knew better. She had been waiting for this moment, dreading it. 3 months of caring for her younglings, and now someone had finally noticed. Someone had finally decided that a hollow-purpose female should not be raising children. She gathered the 5 younglings, making sure they were clean and properly dressed. They chattered excitedly, unaware of her fear. The smallest one, Nira, held Kelara's hand tightly. "Where are we going, Ama Kelara?" she asked. "To see the administrator," Kelara replied, keeping her voice steady. "Remember your manners." Portha's office was in the administrative section of the station. When they arrived, Kelara's worst fears were confirmed. Standing beside Porth was an unfamiliar Veeth female wearing the formal robes of the Reproduction Council. Her plating was marked with the symbols of high rank. "This is Overseer then," Porth said stiffly. "She has come from the homeworld regarding the younglings." Then studied Kelara with cold, evaluating eyes. Then she looked at the younglings pressed close to Kelara's sides. "I am here to collect the orphaned younglings," then announced. "Proper placement has been arranged. They will be transported to breeding-capable mothers who can provide appropriate care." The words hit Kelara like a physical blow. The younglings did not fully understand, but they sensed her distress. They pressed closer to her, their small hands gripping her clothing. "They are doing well here," Kelara managed to say. "They are healthy, learning, growing properly." "That is irrelevant," then replied. "You are hollow purpose. You were permitted temporary care only because of emergency circumstances. Those circumstances have ended. The younglings require proper mothers." "I am their mother," Kelara said quietly. Then's expression hardened. "You are genetically unsuitable for reproduction. You cannot be a mother. Gather their belongings. They leave within the hour." "No," Kelara said. The word came out stronger than she expected. Then's eyes narrowed. "This is not a request. This is an order from the Reproduction Council. You will comply." Victor stepped forward from where he had been standing near the door. "Overseer then, if I may. I am Dr. Victor Hall, xenobiologist assigned to this station. I have been conducting research into Veeth genetics, and I believe you should see my findings before making this decision." "Human opinions on Veeth reproduction are not relevant," then said dismissively. "Even when those opinions are based on your own species' historical genetic data?" Victor pulled out his data pad. I have evidence that Kelara's body type is not a flaw but a rare ancient genetic pattern. Her physical structure may actually be superior for reproduction. Impossible, then snapped. She was properly assessed by qualified physicians. She was assessed against current population standards, Victor corrected. Not against the full range of Veeth genetic history. Look at this data. Kelara's skeletal structure, organ placement, and body proportions match a genetic line that existed in your species 15,000 years ago. These ancient Veeth carried larger eggs and produced more robust offspring. He projected the genetic comparisons onto Portha's wall display. Charts and graphs filled the screen, showing clear patterns that even Kelara could understand. Your medical councils dismissed this variation as a flaw because it no longer fits the current ideal, Victor continued. But evolution does not work that way. Genetic diversity is valuable. Rare traits often resurface because they serve important purposes. Kelara's body is not wrong. It is different. And difference is not the same as defective. Then studied the data, her expression unreadable. Even if this research has merit, it does not change the current assessment. She is designated hollow purpose. She cannot raise younglings. Why not? Victor challenged. What exactly makes her unsuitable? She has cared for these 5 younglings for 3 months. They are thriving. They are happy. They are bonded to her. She did not birth them, then said as if that explained everything. And that matters more than love? Victor asked. More than daily care? More than the bond they have formed? Before then could respond, Nira stepped forward. The smallest youngling looked up at the overseer with her large, serious eyes. You want to take us away from Ama Kelara, she said. Her voice was small but clear. Then looked startled. Younglings rarely spoke to adults they did not know. You will be given to proper mothers. Females who can truly care for you. Ama Kelara is our proper mother, Nira said. The other 4 younglings moved to stand beside her, forming a small line between them and Kelara. We know she did not lay our eggs, another youngling Tariq added. Our birth mothers died. We remember them dying. We were scared, a third youngling Senna said. Everything was loud and hot and people were screaming. Then we were here and everything was strange. Ama Kelara made us feel safe, Nira continued. She held us when we cried. She sang to us. She taught us that we could be happy again even though our birth mothers were gone. She feeds us every day, Tariq said. She plays with us. She teaches us things. She protects us. She is our mother because she chose us, Senna finished. Not because she had to. Because she wanted to. The room fell silent. Kelara stared at her younglings, her heart so full she thought it might burst. They understood. Somehow, these small children understood what she had learned from Victor. That family was not just biology. That motherhood was choice in love and daily care. Then's face showed the first crack in her cold expression. She looked at the younglings, really looked at them. They were healthy, well-groomed, clearly well-fed. Their eyes were bright and unafraid. They stood together, protecting the female they called mother. This is highly irregular, then said slowly. The entire situation is irregular, Porth interjected. He had been silent until now, watching everything unfold. We have never had a war create so many orphans. We have never had facilities so overwhelmed that younglings had to wait months for placement. Perhaps irregular circumstances require irregular solutions. Then walked closer to the younglings. They did not shrink away but they moved slightly closer to each other, a unified front. You truly wish to stay with her? Then asked them. Yes, all 5 said together. Then turned to Kelara. And you wish to keep them? Even knowing you will face judgment from others? Even knowing many will say you are unsuitable? Kelara looked down at her 5 younglings. At Nira who had nightmares and needed to be held. At Tariq who asked endless questions about how things worked. At Senna who loved to sing. At the other 2, Mikal and Laura, who were learning to read and were so proud of every new word. They are mine, Kelara said simply. And I am theirs. I do not care what others say. Overseer then stood in Administrator Portha's office, staring at the 5 younglings who had just declared Kelara their mother. For a long moment no one spoke. The tension in the room was thick enough to touch. Finally, then shoulders relaxed slightly. She looked at Kelara with an expression that was not quite warm but no longer completely cold. I came here expecting to find neglected younglings being improperly cared for by an unsuitable female, then said slowly. That is not what I see. What do you see? Victor asked quietly. I see healthy younglings who are clearly bonded to their caregiver. I see a female who, despite her designation, has provided adequate care. then paused, choosing her words carefully. I see something that should not work according to our understanding, but clearly does work in reality. She pulled out her own data pad and made some notes. I cannot override council designation on my own authority. However, I can file a special circumstance report. Kelara, you will be permitted to continue as guardian while this matter is reviewed by the High Council. Kelara felt her legs go weak with relief. The younglings cheered, not fully understanding but knowing they were not being separated from her. How long will the review take? Victor asked. Months possibly, then admitted. The council moves slowly, especially on matters this unprecedented. But until a decision is made, the younglings remain here. She looked directly at Kelara. Do not make me regret this choice. I will not, Kelara promised. After then left, Kelara returned to her quarters with her younglings. They were excited, chattering about how they had been brave and spoken to the scary official. Victor followed, smiling broadly. You did well, he told them. All of you. You spoke your truth with courage. That night, after the younglings were asleep, Kelara and Victor sat in the laboratory talking quietly. Do you think the council will really allow this? Kelara asked. I do not know, Victor admitted. But you gave them something they cannot ignore. Evidence that their system might be flawed. 5 younglings who are thriving under your care. And most importantly, you showed them that family can exist outside their traditional definitions. You showed me that first, Kelara said. Before the younglings came. You taught me that motherhood could be more than biology. Victor smiled. I just shared human perspectives. You are the one who put them into practice. The weeks turned into months. Kelara continued caring for her younglings while waiting for the council's decision. They grew taller, stronger, more confident. They attended lessons with other young Veeth on the station. They learned to read and write. They laughed and played and occasionally fought with each other like all siblings do. Other Veeth on the station began to see them differently. At first, many had whispered about the hollow-purpose female raising younglings. But as time passed and the children clearly thrived, the whispers changed. Some even became supportive. One elderly female stopped Kelara in the corridor one day. I had a daughter who was declared hollow-purpose, she said quietly. She never recovered from the shame. She ended her own life. The female's eyes were sad. Watching you with those younglings, I wonder what might have been different if she had been given a purpose beyond biology. Victor continued his research, building a comprehensive case about Kelara's genetic pattern. He contacted other xenobiologists, gathered more historical data, and wrote papers arguing that Veeth reproduction standards were too narrow. Some scientists dismissed his work. Others found it fascinating. 6 months after then's visit, an official communication arrived from the homeworld. Kelara stood in Portha's office again, her younglings beside her, Victor nearby. Her hands were shaking as Porth read the message. The High Council has reviewed the case of Kelara, designated hollow purpose, and her care of 5 orphaned younglings. Portha's voice was carefully neutral. After extensive deliberation and review of genetic research provided by Dr. Victor Hall, the Council has made the following determination. Kelara held her breath. The younglings pressed close to her. The Council recognizes that unprecedented circumstances require new approaches. While Kelara's designation as unsuitable for biological reproduction stands, her capability for nurturing care has been proven. Therefore, the Council is creating a new category, mothers of choice. Kelara's vision blurred with tears. Mothers of choice. Not hollow purpose. Not unsuitable. Mothers. Porth continued reading. Mothers of choice are Veeth who raise younglings not born to them, providing care through choice and commitment rather than biological necessity. Kelara is hereby recognized as the first official mother of choice. Her guardianship of the 5 orphaned younglings is made permanent. The younglings erupted in cheers. They jumped and hugged each other and Kelara, their joy filling the office. Even Porth allowed himself a small smile. There is more, he said. The Council is establishing facilities on the homeworld to train other hollow-purpose females as mothers of choice. With so many war orphans, they recognize the need for caregivers who can provide love even if they cannot provide biological birth. Victor was grinning widely. They are changing the entire system. Kelara, do you understand? You did not just save yourself and your younglings. You opened a door for thousands of others. 2 weeks later, a formal ceremony was held at the station. Veeth officials arrived from the homeworld. Other mothers of choice who had been quickly trained and matched with orphans came to witness the historic occasion. The station's assembly hall was decorated with growing crystals and traditional banners. Kelara wore formal robes for the first time since her assessment ceremony. But these robes were different. They were marked with new symbols. Symbols of choice, commitment, and nurturing care. Her 5 younglings stood before her, each holding a piece of a genetic bond bracelet. Traditionally, these bracelets were given by birth children to their biological mothers. But the council had approved new bracelets for mothers of choice. Neera stepped forward first. Kelara, you found me when I was scared and made me feel safe. She placed her segment of the bracelet on Kelara's wrist. Tarek came next. You answered all my questions and taught me to think. His segment clicked into place. Senna followed. You sang to me and showed me that joy could exist even after sadness. Another segment joined. Mikal and Laura came together. You gave us a family when we thought we had lost everything. The final segments completed the bracelet. The bracelet glowed softly on Kelara's wrist, a symbol of unbreakable bonds formed not through biology but through love. The gathered witnesses made the traditional humming sound of approval. Overseer then, who had returned for the ceremony, approached Kelara. You have proven that our understanding of family was too narrow, she said. You have given hope to many who thought they had none. The council thanks you. After the ceremony, Kelara found Victor standing near the refreshment tables. He was watching the celebration with satisfaction. Thank you, Kelara said simply. For what? For being the first person to treat me like I mattered. For teaching me that family is built through love and choice, not just biology. For believing in me when I did not believe in myself. Victor's eyes were suspiciously bright. You did all the hard work. I just shared some different perspectives. Those perspectives changed everything, Kelara said. She looked at her younglings who were playing with the other children in the hall. I was told I was hollow purpose. That my life had no meaning. But now I have 5 children who call me mother. And I helped create a future where others like me can find purpose too. Purpose is not something others give you, Victor said gently. It is something you create through your choices and actions. You chose to love those younglings. You chose to fight for them. You chose to challenge an entire system that said you were not good enough. That is where real purpose comes from. Kelara watched her 5 younglings laugh and play, safe and happy and loved. Her bracelet glowed softly on her wrist. Around her, other mothers of choice were beginning their own journeys with their own chosen children. The council had declared her body unsuitable for reproduction. They had cast her out, labeled her broken, sent her away to a remote station where she would not remind others of biological failure. But one human had seen her differently. He had shown her that motherhood was not about the body that carried eggs. It was about the arms that held frightened children. The voice that sang comfort. The heart that chose love even when biology said no. Kelara had been cast out. But in exile she had found her true purpose. Not the purpose others tried to assign her, but the purpose she chose for herself. She was a mother. And that was everything.